There's a saying down here in the south, the land remembers. Sometimes I think the earth itself holds tight to every scream, every secret, every careless sin. I didn't believe that, not truly, until the day I watched a man fall from the sky like a broken bird, and the ground swallowed his story whole. It was the last day on the job at the old Rivergate Towers in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The air was thick with the promise of rain, that swampy heaviness pressing down on your bones. We'd been working that site for nearly a year, me, a handful of roughnecks, and Superintendent Earl Red McAllister. Red was the kind of man who chewed tobacco like it was a religion and spat at the mention of safety harnesses. He'd say, "I've been walking beams since before you were out of diapers, boy. Ain't no belt gonna save you from God's will." The job was nearly done. The last of the glass was set, the concrete cured, the cranes already half loaded for the next gig. We were up on the 10th floor, tying off loose ends. I remember the way the Mississippi shimmered in the distance, muddy and restless like it knew something we didn't. Red was pacing the edge, barking orders, his hard hat pushed back on his head. The man was fearless, or foolish, maybe both. He'd never once clipped in, not in all the months I'd known him. The new guys whispered about it, but nobody dared challenge him, not to his face. That morning, I found a crow feather on the rebar, black and oily, like it had been dipped in tar. I tucked it in my pocket, a silly superstition from my grandma, who always said crows were messengers. I didn't know then what message was coming. We broke for lunch around noon, sweat pooling in our boots. The sky was bruised purple, thunder rumbling low. Red sat apart from us, staring out over the city, jaw working a fresh plug of tobacco. He looked tired, older than I'd ever seen him. "You'll finish up the punch list," he called. "I'm going to check the east scaffolding." I watched him go, a little uneasy. Something about the way he moved, like a man walking out to meet his fate. I shook it off. Red was indestructible, or so I thought. The east scaffolding was notorious. It had creaked and groaned all week, but nobody'd bothered to tag it out. We were behind schedule, and corners had been cut. I'd heard the whispers. Someone had swapped out a few bolts with cheaper ones, the kind that rusted if you so much as looked at him wrong. But Red, he trusted his gut more than any safety inspector. I was tightening a bracket when the scream came. Not a word, just a raw animal sound that froze the blood in my veins. I spun around in time to see Red, arms pinwheeling, tumbling from the edge. He fell so fast it was like the world itself had yanked him down. No harness, no hope. He hit the ground with a sound I'll never forget. A wet final thud that echoed up the steel frame. For a moment, the whole site went silent, even the wind holding its breath. We ran down the stairs, boots clanging, hearts pounding. By the time we reached him, it was clear there was nothing left to save. Red's eyes were open, staring up at the sky, as if he'd finally seen something that scared him. The paramedics came, faces grim. The site manager tried to herd us away, but nobody moved. We stood there, a circle of men, staring at the broken body of the man who'd once seemed immortal. That night, the rain finally came, washing the blood into the red Louisiana mud. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Red falling over and over, like the earth itself was replaying his last mistake. The next morning, the company sent in a cleanup crew. They power washed the concrete, scrubbed away every trace. But the stain was still there, a shadow that wouldn't lift. The foreman told us to get back to work, but nobody wanted to go near the east scaffolding. Some said they heard footsteps up there, even after it was torn down. Others claimed to see a figure standing on the edge, just out of the corner of their eye. I tried to forget, but the land remembers. Every time I drive past Rivergate Towers, I see that spot. Just a patch of concrete, but I know what's buried beneath. Sometimes when the wind is right, I swear I hear Red's voice, rough and angry, warning me to tie off, to watch my step. I kept the crow feather. It sits in my truck. a reminder that some messages come too late. But that wasn't the end of it. Not by a long shot. The days after Red's fall felt like we were trapped in a bad dream that wouldn't end. The company tried to sweep it under the rug, but the air on that site was thick with something darker than dust and sweat. I kept telling myself it was just grief, maybe guilt, but deep down, I knew better. A week later, I was back at the site, assigned to finish some minor repairs. The scaffolding was gone, the east side cordoned off with yellow tape, but the building still loomed like a silent witness. The Mississippi's muddy water glistened in the distance, but the sky was always grey, heavy with rain that never seemed to fall. I was working alone, tightening bolts near the top floor when I heard it. Faint tapping, like fingernails rapping on steel. I froze, heart thudding. The wind was dead still. I called out, "Hello?" but only silence answered. Then, from the corner of my eye, I saw a shadow move. A figure standing at the edge where Red had fallen. I blinked, and it was gone. My skin crawled. I told myself it was a trick of the light, or maybe my mind playing games. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. When I finally got home, I found the crow feather I'd kept in my truck was gone. In its place, on my kitchen table, was a single black feather, slick and oily, like it had been plucked from a nightmare. I didn't sleep. Every creak in the house sounded like footsteps on steel. Every shadow seemed to stretch and twist, taking shape. I kept hearing a voice, low and gravelly, whispering my name. I tried to tell myself it was just the wind, but the voice grew louder, angrier. Over the next few days, strange things started happening on the site. Tools would disappear, only to be found in impossible places, hung from beams, balanced on edges. Lights flickered, machines sputtered and died. The men started talking about a curse, about Red's restless spirit. One evening, I stayed late, trying to finish a report. The office was empty, the only sound my typing. Suddenly, the lights went out. I fumbled for my phone, the screen casting. A pale glow, then I heard it, the unmistakable sound of boots on metal stairs, slow and deliberate. "Red?" I whispered, my voice shaking. No answer, but the footsteps stopped right outside the door. I backed away, heart pounding, and the door slammed shut. The lights flickered back on, and I was alone again. I quit that job the next day. But the story doesn't end there. Months later, I heard about another accident at a different site. Another man, falling from a height, refusing to wear a harness. The details were eerily similar. The man's name, Earl McAllister. I realized then that Red wasn't just a man who fell. He was a warning, a dark shadow cast over every reckless step taken without respect for the dangers lurking in the heights. Sometimes, when the wind howls through the trees and the rain taps on my window, I swear I feel him watching, waiting, because the land remembers, and it never forgets.